You're friends with a lot of European prime ministers
Sure,
and presidents. What's happening in Europe?
Europe is structurally in the most vulnerable geopolitical position because they have a lot of trade with China, but they don't trust the Chinese. And the Chinese in many ways are hollowing out their own industrial base. You saw Volkswagen just had to fire half of their employees, all of that. They've got, this big vulnerability from Russia, which invaded Ukraine and is engaging in espionage and all sorts of asymmetrical attacks across Europe, disinformation campaigns and the rest. And then they've got an alliance with the United States that they don't really trust. Right. So they are really vulnerable in a way that Japan is less so, India is less so, Mexico is less so. They're really vulnerable. Now, Europe has been the most successful experiment of supranational governance that humans have ever done. Taking all of these countries, putting them together and saying, we're going to take a whole bunch of sovereignty and do it at the Brussels level, create a common market and common policies that used to be made by individual governments. But Europe, with all of these vulnerabilities, suddenly is thinking, we better start making our model a lot stronger. And that's what I see them doing. Now, the Draghi plan, Mario Draghi, Super Mario, the former head of the ECB, the European Central Bank, came up with this 800-page competitiveness plan. And everyone out there that knows the marketplace is like, yes, this is what Europe needs to do. And of course, because they're 27 countries and they're bureaucratic, they move slowly, but they are moving. And so you see an effort to increase productivity, to increase infrastructure investment. You see an effort to increase the financial integration in Europe and build stronger institutions. You see the Europeans spending more on defense. Why? Because the Russians are scaring the hell out of them. They don't know if they can, rely on the Americans. You see more countries wanting to join the EU. Iceland talking about it, Norway, the Ukrainians. Ukraine, of course, has become the most powerful military in the region. You see the UK that recognizes that Brexit was a really bad idea economically. The next UK Prime Minister, Mr. Burnham, is much more likely to try to get back into a common market. So I don't think Europe is still slow. It is not as productive as it needs to be. It is not spending on defense the way it needs to be yet. But the movement is towards a greater recognition that this is a problem. And that they need to address it. So clearly, the EU is now moving faster because they have to. Urgency creates superpowers, right?
Yeah.
That's where we are.
So it'll bounce back?
It is in the process of making itself stronger and more resilient. Now, look, there's dangers. If France elects Marine Le Pen as president next year, that's a much bigger danger than Brexit was, because you'll have a core European leader that will say, we no longer believe in this process. I do not believe it is likely she will win. It's more likely that Edouard Philippe, for example, a centrist, will win. But there is a real chance she could win. And so, again, the future's not written.
Yeah.
We've got scenarios and there are dangers and vulnerabilities for the Europeans, but absolutely, they are now taking this much more seriously than they were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago.